Welcome to our video for session 1, From Chaos to Peace. I'm really glad that you're joining me today. I hope that you've had a great first week with our study so far, and I'm sure that within the material you learned a lot about me that you never really thought you'd get to know as Bible study leader so deeply. But I want you to understand that my story is the whole basis for this study. So together we're going to go through it. I hope you will enjoy it. I hope you will learn something, and I hope that from my mistakes, you and I together can discover what God's peace can look like in not only my life, but in your life. Today, we're going to go through a demonstration of what I tried to do my best in writing to cover for you. I hope that when you see it in visual representation, that you can see how God can work within your life too. Thank you for joining us. I am so glad y'all came back this week. I hope that you've had a really good week. And by good, I honestly do not mean free from problems. Because as you know, a week free from problems pretty much means that we weren't doing anything, hadn't left our bedroom, and stayed in there the entire time we're isolated. So I really don't want that for you. But I hope that it has been a week where you have been able to recognize God showing up in some way in your life each day. Whether it was something small, like you're able to wake up on time and didn't feel like you had to rush out of the house, or something miraculously big where an issue you've been struggling with all of a sudden just kind of removed. At least you didn't feel a burden about it. My week has not been the easiest week, but that tends to happen when you have kids and you have a husband and you have things that you're doing. It just gets to be busy. So I want you to know that I'm not up here trying to tell you that it's good to have a perfect week, because I don't have them. I have laundry issues. I have a dog who took off for 3 hours this week. Our puppy took off for 3 hours. So, I run around. That's a time stealer. They happen. That's not like you can avoid them. But it's what we do in response to those things that makes the difference. And if you read through this week's material, hopefully you remember the definition of peace. See, peace is not the absence of chaos. It's the absolute trust that God's got a plan in that chaos. And it's trusting that God will walk you through it. And there's a big difference. Because when you think of peace, some of us think of just the absence of anything. Just this calm and this quiet. But in reality around us, that doesn't really happen. But we can have that calm and that quiet in our hearts when we're trusting in God's way, when we're trusting His plan. And that's what I hope you're beginning to sense this week. What I want you to do is to take a few minutes to share with each other something that you can recognize where you went, oh, that went a little bit easier this week than I anticipated. It could be something small where you thought, oh my gosh, carpool was going to be crazy, or you thought maybe that your work week was going to be insane, but you survived and you're like, it wasn't so bad. Anything. So if you can take just a couple minutes, and those of you who are watching, if you can take a couple minutes and just talk about what it is that was something nice and rewarding about your week that was unexpected, just go ahead and do that now. I hope that you were able to identify at least one way where you felt God's peace this week that maybe you hadn't felt before. See, so often we just kind of take it and we don't really stop to acknowledge it and to recognize it. And one of the ways that I'm going to encourage you over the next several weeks as we do this study is to make the time to listen for how God's trying to give you His peace. Because it's not something we can create on our own. It's something that we have to receive. And when we learn to receive it, then we recognize it and we feel it. And when we have that feeling, then we operate from it. And we operate from it, then when new things come at us, we go, I'm not going to let that steal this feeling of peace. I'm going to hold on to God. I'm going to trust Him through this. Because life isn't going to be without its struggles. It just isn't. Right? Now, this week, if you read through the material, you got to know a whole lot about me. But I'm sure you're going, whoa, this child does not have money boundaries. But I wanted to share with you my past life so that you recognized that not only am I up here as someone talking about God's peace, but I have experienced the chaos. My life truly was incredibly chaotic. And I don't just mean that there was stuff going on around me. It was all the mess going inside of me that was causing the most trouble. I shared with you in the best way I could in words the visual representation of my life that God kind of helped me recognize. Today, I want to show you what that looks like. I want to bring you that visual as I experienced it. So as I said, I was looking out my back window, and this is what I saw. This is what God said my life looked like. It was full of weeds. It was dead. It's got a big old crack. I don't know if you can see, but it's a mess. There is a little bit of growth here. Yeah, it looks kind of nice. But seriously, this needs some TLC. It's really, this was my life though. And I'm not kidding when I say that I was dry, I was worn out, I was overwhelmed. I was absolutely at the bottom of anything in my life. But see, God is so good. He doesn't leave us like this. And I'm so grateful. Because if you're feeling that your life is kind of like this too, guess what? It doesn't have to stay that way. See, when I got to this point, I realized I needed something bigger than me to help me get out of this. Because I had put myself here. My choices, my decisions, my reactions to what had been going on in my life brought me to this place. See, when we're in charge, we kind of operate on limited knowledge, don't we? We don't know what's going to come at us. We may say, yes, I can do that. Sure, I can add that into my schedule, no problem. And before we know it, we're scheduled to the max. We're doing things that maybe we shouldn't be doing. And we're resentful, and we're bitter, and we're angry about it. And if you get to where I was, you act out in really bad ways. You scream, you yell, you get stressed, you eat. You do all kinds of those things that we have in response to the chaos in our lives. It's not a healthy place to be. But like I said before, God is so good. He does not leave us here. So while I did start like this, God had something else in store. You see, God said, this is your life. It's this. I've given you this life. But what you're filling it with is giving you this. It's not giving you what I had designed for you. And I want you to fill it with what I have for you so that you can have what I have planned. And he says things like, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper and not to harm you. See, I had been running scared my whole life. I better make sure it works out. I better fix it. I better take care of it, because if I don't, what's going to happen? And you go down that ugly lane. But God's way says, no, let me do this. So he showed me, you have this life. If you fill it with the things of me, we're going to have something special. But first, I want you to understand, you need to fill it with my rock. See, in gardening, when you put rock at the bottom of your containers, it adds really good drainage for them. So it keeps the roots healthy. They don't get stuck sitting in a bunch of water at the bottom of the container. But in our lives, our rock is just as important. Our rock is Jesus. We have to have that life-sustaining, that life-giving relationship with Jesus that we choose on our own to have. And when things were really bad, I didn't have that relationship. It wasn't until I was at the bottom when my doctor said, you know what, we're wearing a heart monitor because we're afraid you're going to have a heart attack. When I was getting ready to have to leave everything I ever knew in California and move out to South Carolina for nothing. I knew nobody, right? South Carolina? Where is that? Right? I had a newborn. I had a 4.5-month-old. My husband was not emotionally present. He was actually physically gone too. He left the week after my son was born for 6 weeks. It was a lonely, desperate time. But God said, you know what? You build your life on my son, I'll take care of you. I said, okay, God, I got this relationship with Jesus. Now what? What does that really mean? He said, well, you got to also look to my word. I have some promises for you, and they mean something, and I want you to recognize those promises. Those promises are the things that are going to sustain you when troubles come. You see, when I moved to South Carolina, it wasn't everything got easy. You know, I gave my life to Christ, and it wasn't like, poof, problems were gone. No, I got there, and I was diagnosed by a second doctor with perimenopause. Do y'all know what that is? You can enter into menopause due to stress. It's called perimenopause, and that's what I had. I had stressed myself into hot flashes. I had stressed myself into irregularities. I had stressed myself so badly that the hormonal test they give you verified it. That's kind of sad. Not only that, when I got there, I rolled my SUV into a ditch with my children in the car. If you've ever had the jaws of life come to get you out of a sunroof in your car, it's terrifying. And 9 months later after that, my dad had passed away from lung cancer. So things didn't get easier. For a while, they got really bad. Even though I'd given my life to Christ, I said, okay, God, now what? Now what? He said, you have to trust me. So he gave me 4 promises, and those form the basis for the nourishment of everything in my life. The first one is his promise of peace for me. He promises to give me that peace that transcends all understanding. And transcend doesn't mean that, it just makes everything else better. It means that it doesn't make sense. To transcend means to go above, to rise above. So I was in the middle of all this chaos. God said, I want to give you my peace. I'm like, how can I have peace? All these problems are still here. I said, it's here. Just trust me. Just trust me. It's peace. I said, okay. I said, now, I also have for you a focus. Because you know what? You're running around trying to take care of all these things in your life that aren't meant to be there, and I don't want you to focus on that. I have a way for you, and it's going to require you to have some focus. But I will give you that clarity of focus when you turn to me first. When you ask me what you should do. When you ask me how things should go. When you ask me, I promise I will give you that focus. I said, okay, so now I have some peace. Now I can have some focus. What's next, God? He said, it's going to be order. There's a certain way I want you to do things. You've been trying to take care of everybody and everything, and you're running all over the place, but you're not taking care of yourself. And you know what? Some of those things you're taking care of aren't supposed to be part of your life. And the thing that really got me at one point was, where's your husband in all this? See, we'd had a really rough marriage. Things were not so good. But part of it was my fault, because I really didn't make time for him. I really didn't. But that wasn't the only thing. He said, you know what? It's not just your husband. It's not just taking care of yourself. It's where are your kids? Where are you spending all your time each day? And he was showing me that the way I was spending the time was not his way. And what it looks like in mine doesn't mean it's going to be the way it looks like in your life. I want you to recognize that. But he will give us an order. He will. And that was his 3rd promise to me. His 4th promise to me was balance. If I trusted him, if I allowed him to give me his peace, if I focused on what he wanted me to focus on, if I ordered my days the way he wanted me to order my days, he would make sure my days were balanced. See, what I learned is that one of the big things, one of the big reasons behind why I was doing everything I was doing is I was afraid I would drop the ball somewhere. I was afraid that plate that I had been spinning would crash to the ground. I wanted to make sure everything was done, that it was all done right. And right meant, way up here. Right? So I was running around constantly trying to make sure I had balance. I was trying to create my own balance. And he said, it doesn't work that way. You can't create balance and then get peace. You have to let me give you the peace. And from that, you get some focus. You get some order. You get some balance. It's a way, Stephanie. It's a way of life. But see, it's not just for me. See, when you allow God to give you his peace, when you allow him to nourish you with this soil of his promises, something incredible happens. You have the strength to persevere what comes your way. You have the desire to hold on to that peace, to not let fears or worries steal it from you. And when you have that, you can enter into those things that are in your life with God's perspective on how to react in them, on how to treat them, and where to place them in your days. And I know you're looking at me going, I know it can be all well and good. This is all good for you. But it's not just for me. See, God didn't write the Bible for me. He wrote the Bible for all of us. Every single one of you has the authority to claim these promises in your life. It's not just for me. And then God said, okay, so we've got this new foundation. We've got all these promises. God, what are we going to do with it now? What am I going to do with this now? I got this dirt. but I got all this other stuff in my life. See, I talk normal with God. God and I, we just talk. So I hope I don't offend any of you that when I just say, yeah, God and I, I'm like, okay, God, I got this dirt. I really do. Just said, okay, I have the dirt. Now what? I said, I have all these other things in my life. He said, yes, I know. But you know what? Where are you placing me? And I know it seems funny to think of God as a bowl, but it's important to recognize it's a choice. It's a choice. Are you going to choose to make God the first part of your day? Are you going to choose to have him at the center of every decision that you make? Are you going to choose to live a life the way he wants you to live life? Or are you going to choose to walk your own way? And that's what he had asked me to do. Are you going to put me first? Are you going to put what I want ahead of your own? And I said, yes, God, I will. Well, when I did that, I said, okay, if I'm going to follow you, what does that mean? I still have a husband. I still have kids. I still have a house. I still have all these dreams of things that I want to do. Now what? But see, here's where we change, don't we? We all have the same choice to choose God. But after that, things get a little different. You may or may not have a husband. That doesn't mean you're missing out on something. Trust me, some days, right? But it doesn't mean you're missing out. There is no law that says you have to be married. But it is a priority in my life. But if it's not one in your life, that's okay. That's okay. But God was working with me, and he said, you know what? You've chosen me. I want you to get nourished with me. I want you to pay attention to who I want you to be. Who I have created you to be is not this woman who runs around and does all these crazy things all the time. I have a different plan for you. And I said, all right, I'm listening. I'll be who you want me to be. And I got nourished from him. That whole time of being still, where I was sharing that in this past week, that whole time being still was me and God, and he was filling me and filling me and filling me. And when I got full, he said, now it's time. So that next thing came my marriage. And I had to make a choice again. Am I going to choose to continue working on this? Is my husband going to choose to continue working on this? Because a marriage can't just be saved by one. It has to be saved by both. And I had to make a choice. Would I be one of the ones that would choose? And I did. I chose. My husband, praise God, chose too. He didn't get so fed up with me that he walked out. And I didn't get so fed up with him that I walked out. But that's us. Know this, that if divorce has been part of your past, if it seems to be part of your future, that is not something that deserves condemnation by anybody, especially not me. I am not here to tell you that because my marriage is saved, yours should be saved too. That's between you and God. And I want you to recognize that you can have God's peace in claiming that. You understand? I hope you hear me. I hope you hear me in this. But my priority was my marriage, and I chose to make it one. Ahead of my kids, ahead of anything else. And that's hard for us moms. Oh my gosh, our kids suck the life out of us sometimes, and we have to give and give and give, and then our house and the laundry, and next thing we know, there's no time for our husbands. There's no energy left for them. But when you choose God's way, he asks you to order things his way, and my husband needed to have his time. So we worked through that a little bit, and then it came to my kids, and I had to choose. Was I going to trust God in how to raise them? Was I going to allow him to teach me how to be a parent? Because I wasn't such a good parent. I still am not a good parent. I still struggle. I really do. It's a learning curve every single season that they go through. Truly it is. But at that particular time, I was really battling wanting to be a parent. And, you know, once you're a parent, it's really hard not to be a parent. But I really didn't want to be one. I had to choose to decide I was going to follow God in how to parent my children. And it was scary because I wasn't sure how to handle all that. And if you don't have kids, this is not one of your priorities. But for me it was, and it was a choice that I made. And if you made the choice to not have children, that is okay. There is no law that says you have to have children. There isn't. You can choose not to. It's between you and God, and if you're married, your husband. If you're choosing not to be married, then it's between you and God. It makes it easier, right? But that was my third priority, was choosing that. after that came what had always come before, and that was my home. My home. See, I don't know about you, but my home was a source of pride. If you walked in and it was perfectly clean, I felt very comfortable being your hostess. But God forbid if you were to knock on my door and it was just a little bit out of place. I'm not kidding. I don't know about you, but in my house I have a room that is the big room. If it's a mess, the rest of the house is trashed. If it's not a mess, the rest of the house is okay. And for me, it's my kitchen. And in our house, when you walked into our house, most people came right through the garage. I don't know what that is. In California, we didn't have that. In South Carolina, you walk through the garage. Here in Missouri, you walk through the garage. It's just, I don't know what that is. But they all came in through the garage, right into my kitchen. So it was a big deal. It was a big deal. To the point where I actually stressed, you know my story, I stressed myself out about everything. But I wouldn't let anybody in my house. I would lock the garage door. So anybody came to the door, I'd have a minute to stash stuff. I'm not kidding. But that's how out of order things were. I would get mad at my kids for making a mess in case someone wanted to come over. I would get mad at my husband for not helping out because he should be helping out, keep the house perfectly clean, just in case somebody came over. Seriously. Seriously. So I had to choose to put this priority after the relationships in my life. And I had to choose God's way and what that would look like. Guess what? God's home is not a Martha Stewart home. Who would have thought? I mean, come on. Shouldn't it be perfectly neat, clean, and organized? Perfectly decorated? Always ready to walk in to, show off to a realtor who might sell your house? Don't ask me where that idea comes from. It just was what I was operating on. Seriously, I don't know. But that being said, I had to choose to make it a secondary priority, and I did. You have a home too. And if it's taking over your relationships with other people because you're terrified of what they might think about it looks like, it's time to have a conversation with God. I can't make a judgment, nor will I ever. But I tell you what, if I walked into your house and it was trashed, I would not think one bad thing about you. And I don't think that any of you or any of your friends would feel the same. Right? I don't know. But that's just me. After that came a big priority. See, I had gotten this down. I had felt like, okay, God, I'm walking with you. I'm working on my marriage. I'm working on learning to parent my kids and really want to be around them and love them. I'm keeping my home back here. I'm really working hard. I felt like for the first time I had some peace. And I shared that. And, some of my friends kind of noticed some things were different. Some things were kind of calm about me. I wasn't, like this all the time. And I was relaxed and I was lighting up and I was laughing and I was having a good time and things were good and I was happy with my kids. I wasn't complaining all the time. And they said, what is going on? I kind of shared what was happening. And my good friend decided to tell me that it was time to share that with other people. Yeah. So I'm not very big on, let me rephrase that. I wasn't very big on talking about what was going on in my life because I wanted to be all perfect before I shared any of it. I wanted to be all figured out so I could say, oh yes, I've dealt with that. I've battled that. Yeah, no, not so much. When this friend said, no, you have to talk about it now. So that has become my final seed, is teaching other women through Peace of Mind Ministries, through the Cultivating Peace process, the class, the whole deal. It's been talking about this. And can I just tell you, this is a daily choice now to put last. Because this is a lot more fun. It's fun to be talking with y'all. It's fun to write. Oh, I love to do that. But I have to choose. This has to come after. I need to let myself be nourished by God in the way He wants to nourish me, in the way I feel nourished by Him. I need to spend time with my husband because I'm married. I need to spend time with my kids because I have them. And then I need to spend time on my home. And then working on the rest of the stuff comes last. But it's a choice I have to make. So I made that choice. I chose to trust God. I chose to ask Him to give me His peace, to give me His focus, to give me His order, and to give me His balance. And I've relied on those promises for several years now. And while I can tell you, I am still a recovering, want-to-do-it-all superwoman. I don't think we ever fully outgrow that. I think I have to continually remind myself that that's not who I want to be anymore. But what God has done is He's taken this and He's grown for me an incredible new life. He has taken me from this He has dumped me out and remade me into this. But it's not just for me. It really isn't. This is for every single one of you. I want you to let that sink in for just a minute. No matter what your life feels like it looks like right now, God has an amazing garden for you, filled with your priorities, the ones that He has for you, not mine, not your neighbor's, but yours. However, it's not enough to just choose to put our priorities in order and let it all bloom. We all know, if we're gardeners, it doesn't just work like that, does it? You don't just pot it and say, oh, I'm done. It's all good, right? We don't do that. We have to do some things to take care of it. And the same thing happens in our life as well. One of the things we tend to forget about a lot is our own personal nourishment. See, we have to get ourselves taken care of. And I don't mean by the other people in our lives, because you know what? They can't take care of us. Not the way we really want to. They can add things in, but it's God that we need to allow to give us the nourishment we need. He has got to fulfill us. When we go to Him first, when we go to Him for any struggle we're having and say, okay, God, I can't handle this on my own. Please help me with this. Then He shows us where to go. This is the stuff that I'm talking about, but that nourishment is important. Just like plants need fertilizer, so do we. And it's that food. We don't live just by our own decisions, but we live by Jesus, right? He is our rock, but He is our source for all of the nourishment we need for everything we face. Everything. And without it, we get dry again. We get worn out again. We get weed covered again. We also need to have some water. And I love this reference because you know what? The living water is something that never runs dry. I could finish this whole thing of water. I could down it and it'd be gone. But that never happens. That never happens with God. That never happens with Jesus. That never happens with the Holy Spirit. All three ways that we can get what we need to do what we need to do each and every day. That living water never runs dry. It will never dry out our plants, and it will never leave us. And that's a promise that we need to remember, because so often we go, but it's not working, it's not working, it's not working. It takes some time. See, plants just don't grow on their own. We need to have some light, don't we? I love this one. But we need to have light. Science, if y'all have kids, or if you remember your science classes, you know that photosynthesis is a big part of plants. They have to have light in order to produce the food that they need. So do we. We need to soak in the light all the time. Ladies, I know that having a quiet time is something that you're like, how in the world am I ever going to do that? Where is that ever going to fit into my daily plan? My challenge to you is this. How are you going to get through your days with peace without it? Truly. All day long, it's okay to get in the light. It is okay to soak in it while you're in the car. It is okay to soak in it while you're standing in line. It is okay to pray continuously. Guess what? The Bible recommends it too. The last thing, and this is the painful one, because these ones are kind of easy. You can kind of soak that stuff in. But the last one is our pruning. It's not fun to say no. It's not fun to have things cut out of our lives that are toxic for us. It is not fun to allow things that have overrun our lives to go. But can I just tell you that God is a gentle pruner. He will wait patiently until you're ready to let it go. He's not going to rip it off you. But when you recognize that something is taken over and you need to let it go, it's a good thing to stop and say, is this one of them? See, when we prune stuff off, our plants, even when they look like they have something pretty, become healthier. See, in gardening, when you crop back a plant, you actually allow it to produce more blooms. you allow it to produce more foliage. In the areas that it's already there, it becomes healthier. If you allow it to just go to whatever, this is what you get. This was this. This was allowed to just go. It was allowed to get dry. It wasn't watered. Do you see the difference? It may seem like, but this is a good thing. God knows better. And if my life can be any evidence of that for you, check in with God to see if it's something that you should have in your life or not. And don't be afraid to let it go. One of the things that I struggled the most with when I moved to South Carolina was leaving behind my teaching career. That was one of the big 8 things I faced of the causes of depression, and I had faced them all in a year. But the biggest thing was leave behind my teaching. I loved teaching. It brought me joy. I loved my students. It was phenomenal. But it had taken over. Every minute of the day I woke up was, I have to get to work, I have to get my lesson plans going, I have to get this done. After school was I have to grade, and then I was showing up for my students' activities, and I loved that. I loved that. But it kept pushing out my own kids, I kept pushing out my husband, I kept pushing out everything else. See, when it starts out looking really pretty and wonderful, it's good, but you've got to allow God to prune it back. Did that mean that teaching had to go away from my life completely? I'm here today to show you it didn't. I still teach, but it's not in the way I thought. I teach my kids, I teach women, I get to learn too. So when God wants to prune something from you, don't be afraid to say, no, it's too important, I have to hold on to it. Let it go and see what God does with it. Ladies, I hope that this has been a representation of the visual work that God has done on the inside of me. I was truly this. He absolutely wiped me out clean and started over again. And I fully believe that this is what my life is like now. He can do the same, and he wants so much to do the same for you. It is my prayer that you will let him. Let me end tonight with praying. Father God, I thank you so much. I thank you that you don't let us stay dry and malnourished and overgrown and full of weeds. I thank you, Lord, that you are available and patient and willing to wait as we struggle to grasp your promises. That you're willing to be patient with us as we undo the things that we've believed and come to accept your truth instead. I pray, God, that each woman who's listening to this right now would feel your peace in being able to trust you, Lord. That you have a life for her, that the desires of her heart can't even become close to match. I pray, Lord, that you would watch over each woman, that you would protect her, that you would help her see your truth, Father, and that this week, that you would help her, Lord, to feel even more of your peace.